IB Nation Sports Talk rolling into a Wednesday. Glad to have you with us. He's Vince D'Addario. I'm Sean Stiers. I know that the big boss Brian still has his classroom in session over on the good old buy, sell, hold show. So glad you're with us if you're with us right now as we try to kick this thing off live.
Yeah, we appreciate the love from all of you that are here, and we'll get our influx once they're done over there. But hey, we appreciate the old school people that are here right at the beginning. Appreciate you very much.
I was watching a little bit. I watched what of the Notre Dame men's ACC tournament game, and we'll get to that here in a second because I feel like I just need to throw it at somebody here pretty quickly. But my sister's Cal Poly team is playing UC Santa Barbara in their first round conference game. They were up by 15, and there's now 14 seconds left, and they're up by 3 after they were just up by 5. So it's like nail biting time. Hopefully they pull through and keep hitting refresh. It looks like somebody called a timeout. There's 14 seconds left, and they're up by 3 out there.
Is this the first round?
It's their first round conference tournament game.
Gotcha.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Speaking of which, apparently Salty has gone back to the future because he says the Irish men play Pitt in the first round of the ACC tournament. Will it benefit or hurt them that they have played so recently, Pitt? I'm going to Karnak the Magnificent this. They won 55-54, Salty. And I haven't seen this. This was yesterday, Salty. They actually played North Carolina today, and unfortunately
did not end very well.
It did not end well today. They beat Pitt, though. So whether that was advantageous that they played them fairly recently or not. But
I mean, it would not have been advantageous for them probably to go into an overtime or multiple overtimes based on the game just prior. But they did win that game. So but I will also say, and since we're kind of talking about it, Stamey says it was a disheartening end to the season. Was it? Because
did you have expectations other than what you got? I realized they played North Carolina close at home during the regular season. But were you really expecting something that different today?
Yeah,
what ended up getting ultimately.
I mean, they
maybe you thought it'd be closer. I don't know.
They played UNC tough the first time they played them, obviously. So maybe you expected not a 20-point loss. Okay, that's fine. I wouldn't say it was disheartening, though. The whole season was disheartening. I wouldn't say the last game was disheartening. That's what I will say. And to James's point, not that one. That one.
We'll get to. Let's just start with this. Let's start with this since James is asking. It's immediate. It just happened.
Yeah.
James wants to know if Micah Shrewsberry gets fired after this.
Not a chance.
No.
Zero chance.
No. I mean, look, when he came in the door 2 years ago, he was scrambling to put a team together. He's adjusted to the transfer portal as things have gone along. There's just not that much on that team. Outside of Marcus Burton and Shrewsberry's kid, there's not much on that team, like in the way of athleticism,
right,
and just overall talent. There's just not that much there to work with. I'll give them the fact that they're playing hard, and all that. Like that's probably the brightest sign. And if you're the athletic director sitting in the stands and you're evaluating your coach, especially a relatively new athletic director, Bavacqua's been on the job for about a year. I think the biggest things you're evaluating is the team engaged? Are they trying, when they go out there on the floor? And in spite of the season that they had, I think that you at least check both of those boxes. It hasn't been that aesthetically pleasing to watch, but ultimately I think much more is on next year than was ever going to be on this year.
I will say to your point on, are they playing hard? Are they engaged? All of those things. That was the problem earlier on in the season, to be perfectly honest with you.
Right.
They didn't seem like they were engaged. They didn't seem like they were playing that hard. They, were a joke on the defensive end. Like, it wasn't good. I will say, of all things, it feels like they finished off the season on a good note because they were doing those things towards the end of the season, got some wins out of it, played hard in the 4 overtime game, played hard against Pitt, all like I personally feel like they finished the season on a high note for where this season was.
For where they were. Yeah.
I mean, I fully anticipated they weren't going to make the ACC tournament, and they end up being a 12 seed. Like, that was shocking all by itself to me. And the way that they finished, look, they just ran out of gas, man. Like, this team, number one, they're not very deep. Number two, like you said, they're not super athletic. They're not overly talented. The fact that you were counting on Matt Alaco from Princeton to be like a key cog in the wheel of your starting 5, like, that's not a great place to be in. Now, he made some great plays down the stretch here of the season, and I give all kinds of credit to Matt Alaco and who he is and what he brings to the team. I think they ended on a high note, to be perfectly honest with you. Yes, they lost by 20 to North Carolina. No one is ever going to put Notre Dame and North Carolina in the same sentence. And this is a down year for North Carolina.
Yeah, and I mean, for North Carolina, now granted, for Notre Dame, the only way they were going to make the tournament is if they did what NC State did last year and win 5 games in 5 days and win the whole thing. And again, like, when you look at the roster of what they've got, did anyone expect that? I think that, like, overachieving would have been winning today and getting to tomorrow. Like, that would have been an overachievement. At the very least, they won their first round game, crazy ending. Like, they were gifted that foul in the free throw.
Curious to hear how you thought about that, because obviously I'm sure you guys talked about it yesterday on the show, but holy smokies.
Man, I know. Well, James is saying we won the last 3 games before the tournament. However, look at NC State firing their coach a year after making the Final Four. And we talked about this on Monday. Like, that's a completely, again, like, from what I understand, and it's not like, as we said on Monday, neither Vince nor I follow NC State basketball that closely. But apparently Keats was on the verge of getting fired. Like, if they hadn't won 5 games in 5 days to win the ACC tournament and then ultimately ran all the way to the Final Four last year, he was going to be fired, apparently, before all that happened. And so, like, when you get to the Final Four, especially when it's your first time in 40 years, there's no way you're firing your head coach. Now, you can debate signing him to a 2-year extension, firing him a year later for missing the ACC tournament, and then being on the hook for $7.5 million at the end, unless some alums are going to, help you eat that money. Like, that's a completely different discussion. But this is only year 2 for Shrewsberry. Again, like, to me, there's much more on the line next year for what he shows with all these recruits that he's got coming in. And quite frankly, also, can he go out and get not just a body from the transfer portal? Can he go out and get someone who can also maybe actually help make a difference next year? Because he's going to have a player of the year candidate in Marcus Burton, assuming Burton is back next year.
Well, and I think that's a legit question, to be perfectly honest with you. We know for a fact teams came after him after last year, and he was the leading scorer in the ACC this year. Like, the teams are going to come after him. So you're going to have to do just as good of a job recruiting guys into your program as you are recruiting whoever you want to stick around your program, with Burton being that number 1 guy. I mean, bottom line. So if you're a Notre Dame fan, you hope that wasn't the last time that you see Marcus Burton in a Notre Dame uniform, obviously. And I'm not speaking from any kind of knowledge about anything that's going on, but what I'm saying is you better put your best foot forward to keep Marcus Burton in that number 3 in blue and gold, because that's going to be the biggest task.
It's going to come down to, because he's not going to be an NBA player. I know, he tested the water with the NBA, and Stymie's asking if he sticks around. It's ultimately going to come down, one, to, the kind of sales pitch. Well, depending on where his head is, like, does he want to at least stick around, because he is a local guy. He always wanted to play at Notre Dame. He's got that for 2 years. So now, does he want to, after 2 years, assuming that he doesn't plan on pursuing some kind of professional career, does he say, hey, I'm good enough, I can go play for somebody who can at least be in the NCAA tournament next year, have a chance maybe to, win a conference championship someplace, or even a national championship someplace? Like, how much does that factor in versus knowing that Shrewsberry has this young, talented freshman class coming in next year? Hey, we're going to have more talent around you. And, and then like in terms of NIL compensation and all that kind of stuff, because obviously that's a thing too. And I mean, I just think that year to year, especially in basketball, like what one player can do for another team, I think it's so much is up in the air year to year in that sport.
Well, and I'm sorry, but if you take Marcus Burton off of this team this year, it's a real bleak season. Okay. I mean, that 6-game stretch where he was out with that injury was bleak. You know what I mean? And it took a while for him to kind of come back and kind of be who he is and all of those different things. You take number 3 off of this team this year, and this team is very, very rough. So think about that moving into next year. Yes, you've got this great recruiting class coming in. Awesome. That's fantastic. But you brought those guys in to play with Marcus Burton. I mean, let's be honest. Like that's the blueprint for Micah Shrewsberry. And if you lose the best player on your team, that's going to set them back. And you better temper your expectations, right? Like, yes, NC State fired their coach after they went to the Final Four. Notre Dame's not going to the Final Four anytime soon. I just want to put that out there because the last time they were there, I wasn't even born. Okay.
Correct.
And so, like, you have to have appropriate expectations. You know what I mean? And so, do I think if Marcus sticks around and they kind of reshape the roster a little bit along with these young guys, can they make the NCAA tournament? That's a conversation we can have. Final Four, national championship, that's a different conversation.
Yeah. James says it was a very tough watch without Burton, and it was still a fairly tough watch even with Burton because there's just so many missed shots. It's like I mean, but you're right. Obviously, at least with Burton, they could be competitive and win some games. Without him, that was a gaping hole, like a gaping hole. But
no doubt.
I mean, like a year from now, I feel like minimal expectation is they've got to be on the NCAA bubble, if not an NCAA team a year from now.
Yeah.
I
think that's fair though, right? I mean, I don't want to step all over our conversation that we're going to have during rapid fire, but
yes, we will address some things in rapid fire.
Absolutely. But I don't accept that just today's game is a disheartening way to end the season. I think they ended the season with the arrow pointing in the right direction. Now they've got a lot of work to do in the offseason.
Yes. Like I said, they showed some fight toward the end of the season. The fact that even if it is a home game, the fact that you're able to win a 4 overtime game and finish it off without Burton in there because he ended up fouling out. He obviously gave you a lot before he fouled out.
Oh, yeah.
Andre says very young team outside of Burton. And again, like
Burton's sophomore.
Yeah, and that's what I mean. In basketball, I don't think there's an excuse for young team because most of the most talented guys are freshmen.
Yes,
look
at the flag.
That's what I was pointing this way. That's pointing to Duke with my thumb. That's what I was doing. Yes, exactly. Okay, but good questions, and again, we will we'll get back into the men's basketball conversation coming up in rapid fire in just a little bit. Salty, kicking us off. Your most favorite and least favorite positions, both offense and defense. In football.
Like just in general, or like specifically to Notre Dame? Just in general?
Yeah, like are we just talking like what's our favorite position? Like,
I mean, okay, my favorite position on offense is quarterback. That's the most fun to watch, and it's the most important. So I that's my favorite position. Second would be offensive line, if I'm being honest. I love offensive line. I love coaching offensive line. I love what an offensive line can do for you. So offensive line would be my second one. I don't know, like my least favorite position in football on offense is probably wide receiver. And the reason for that, too many prima donnas. I can't.
That's true. That's true.
It annoys the crap out of me.
Why is it all the prima donnas are playing wide receiver?
I don't know, man. I don't know. That. It's a great question. Every time there's a prima donna, they seem to be a wide receiver. Teams I've coached, teams I follow, in the NFL. Wide receiver, I think, is it for me. What about you for offense?
For offense, I like running backs. I've always loved running back. Like if I could have been faster and a little bit quicker when I was young, I would have loved to have played running back. Played a little fullback from time to time. Did a little lead blocking. Running back is my favorite. Just some of the best athletes and some of the things they do with the ball. Honestly, least favorite offensively, I would probably just go guard. Like guards are just boring. Guards are just boring to me. Sorry.
Oh, funny.
At least when you're the center, you've got your hand on the ball all the time.
Sure.
So that's exciting. So guards would be low on and obviously tackles. There's more importance, a little bit more athleticism.
Like that. Yeah.
Defensively, linebackers are my favorite.
No personal bias there.
Well, again, I played a little linebacker when I was young. By the time I got older, I played, like we called it a monster position in a high school. So it was a little bit of a hybrid because I'm not the biggest guy, So, but yeah, I mean, that's honestly how the fruit of my loins became a linebacker because
I mean, and he's barrel chested. I mean,
that's right. He was built to be
a middle linebacker.
Exactly.
That was his spot, and there was really no debating that one.
Yep.
I would say actually my favorite is middle linebacker as well. Like it takes the right kind of guy to be a middle linebacker. You know what I mean? Like you've got to be able to drop in coverage. You got to be able to, stuff the run. You got to be the leader because it's the kind of the quarterback of the defense, right? So middle linebacker, I think, is my absolute favorite position on defense. And they just don't make them like they used to. I'll say that. Like a middle linebacker. You know what I mean? Just
Mike Singletary.
Yeah.
Those kind of guys. D.D. Lewis, like one of my old throwback Cowboy guys, like Clay Matthews, the original Clay Matthews, just those old school, bloody nose, Matt Millen, middle linebacker type 100%. Guys. Yep.
As far as my most hated or whatever the question was, or not my favorite.
Least favorite.
I'm trying to go back from like when I coached, you know what I mean? Probably for the same reasons that I dislike wide receivers, it's probably corners. I know that having a good corner is very, very important to a defense, granted, but just the day-to-day interaction with some corners is interesting. In my
so this all comes down to personal,
100%.
Like they're
my favorite. So
are you saying they're the second biggest divas after wide receivers? Basically,
100%.
Shocker that most of those guys in high school play both of those positions, right?
True. Yeah.
Christopher says, watch it, Sean. I played guard. Nothing against guards. It's just, to me, it's like guard play compared to the other offensive line positions, really compared to any of the other offensive positions, guard play in general. Nothing against the personalities or nuances of being a guard.
It's I get it. I get it.
A little bit more boring.
See, Christopher, I went whole offensive line as my second favorite. All right.
Yeah.
So, you're getting it from both sides. As an offensive coordinator, when I was an offensive coordinator, I loved going down with the offensive linemen and working with them because if they stunk, you weren't running anything as far as being an offensive coordinator. You can call the most magical play on the planet. If you didn't have a good offensive line or at least a decent offensive line, it wasn't going to work. So
Josh is a Nickelback fan, apparently in the minority of Nickelback fans.
It's a very specific position.
It is.
It's not on the field as much. Well, they are now, but like back in the day, not as much.
Bubs, do you think the wide receiver recruiting this year will be significantly better than last year or about the same?
I have no basis to really make an opinion on this one because I don't know about recruiting specifically. So I don't want to get out there and say a bunch of random things that I can't follow with fact. So I don't know where the wide receiving group was really rated in the 25 class versus who's on the board on the 26 class and all that. Like all I know is, they're missing out on some wide receivers so far. It's not over, but it's not looking great at the moment. Like, that's what I know. So, yeah.
Trent Mosley
has
committed to USC, says Salty. How much of this involved his relationship with Chad Bowden? I would imagine it played at least some factor.
Yeah.
Because as Salty also says, his parents went to USC.
There's a bit of a legacy situation there.
Yes. Yeah. And again, Vince and I just don't follow the recruiting closely enough to be able to give you.
I didn't know who that was until I saw all the social media stuff about him committing to USC. So that's kind of where I'm at. So I apologize. I know everybody loves recruiting. It's just doesn't do it for me. Like, I was very much into the kicking recruiting in 25. Okay. Now I've hung that up and I don't care anymore about recruiting. So
here's another salty one. And Jesse and I talked about this in rapid fire yesterday. Bruce Feldman of The Athletic included Marcus Freeman in his list of top 10 coaches. Where should he be on the list and which coaches are above him? So I don't know if you've seen this, Vince.
Okay.
But I'll pull up the list that I had yesterday so that I can. He came in. Freeman is number 6 on the list. Kirby Smart is number 1. Ryan Day, number 2. Dabo, number 3. Sarkisian, number 4. Kalen DeBoer, number 5. Freeman, 6. Dan Lanning, 7. James Franklin, 8. Matt Campbell, 9. And then Brian Kelly, number 10. So do you like Marcus Freeman where he is at number 6? I think the biggest question, does Kalen DeBoer really deserve to be one spot ahead of Marcus Freeman? Or is it, considering they're 5 and 6, is it a virtual tie? I mean, we're kind of splitting hairs, right?
Yeah. I mean, you could make an argument for Kalen DeBoer being one spot ahead. Okay. I mean, I'm not going to be too upset about it. I think time will tell on that one, probably sooner than later, maybe who the better coach is. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Look, if Marcus Freeman and Kalen DeBoer were up for the Alabama job, I think Kalen DeBoer still gets the Alabama job. You know what I mean? So, okay, put him higher than Marcus Freeman for right now. That doesn't take into account this year for Marcus Freeman, what he was able to do, take him to a national championship and all that. So I think he's probably properly rated. At this point, he's a top 10 coach. I think you could make the argument he's a top 5 coach, I guess. But I think you're splitting hairs at that point. I think that's where he belongs in the discussion. There's definitely a hierarchy above him, and that's fine. He needs more consistency, year in and year out before I'm ready to move him up. But I think you can make a good argument for top 5, top 6. That's fine.
Yeah. I think the biggest beef that I would have, and we talked about this on yesterday's show, I put the list up there in the chat. I think Ryan Day should not be ahead of Dabo. Personally,
no, not at all. No,
I mean, he wins one national championship with the biggest payroll in the history of college football, and all of a sudden he's the second best coach. Like what about the fact that you lost to definitely the worst Michigan team that he's played since he's been there, I think. How about and the fact that Dabo has 2 national championships and Day still only has the first one. Like, it's a little overreactionary, a little knee-jerk.
And it's also knee-jerk for the fact that Clemson's been a little bit down, right? And people are forgetting he does have quite the resume.
Well, again, he can coach, like X and O, he can coach. It's just that Clemson is not, obviously we know the deal with the transfer portal. So that's where, so if you want to include that as part of, is Dabo, is he keeping up with the times and hold that against him? I guess you could, but from a pure coaching standpoint, I think Dabo's a better coach than Ryan Day. He's already shown that. It's just that, they're the way that Clemson is investing in football and the way Ohio State is investing in football right now are 2 different things, both from the portal and from the NIL perspective. Yep. And I'm not saying Clemson's not doing anything in NIL, but, again, Ohio State went all in with the money that they could spend on that roster. That made a big difference. So Mark has a couple broadcasting questions.
Oh, man. Okay.
He says his ex-wrestlers What do you think of TV broadcast coverage of college wrestling on ESPN Big Ten? Is it viable? Does the quality provide a good experience to the TV audience? Now, Vince is not a former wrestler, and I don't know that you watch that much.
Not like TV. College wrestling. I watched a decent amount of high school wrestling, and I went to the high school, state wrestling championships and all that stuff. But I can't speak to the coverage of college wrestling.
I think for what it is, and I don't watch a ton. Like I'll watch, like I watched the Penn State Iowa duel a month or so ago. I always watch the NCAA tournament when it comes on in March, and that'll be starting next week as well. Last weekend, I watched a little bit of the Big 12 tournament. It was on ESPN. And I mean, like for what it is, they're basically ESPNU, ESPN2 broadcasts. And there's not a lot of mainstream college wrestling coverage. So I think by and large, it's pretty solid, and like the Big Ten Network, fairly solid. There's this dude, like the guy who was doing the play-by-play for that Penn State Iowa game on Big Ten Network. He had to have been a former wrestler because he was literally, like he had zero neck, and he just like the build that he had and everything else. He was very into it. I think it's pretty solid because again, it's not like college wrestling moves the needle, on the old media.
Yeah.
So I think it's for what it is. I think it's pretty good. They're not just a couple, hacks on TV. They always, to me, have pretty good insight and knowledge of the sport, it seems like.
I mean, I will say college wrestling is on TV an awful lot, to be honest with you. You know what I mean? So they're getting some play. They're getting some love,
Where'd the other one go? Mark also wants to know how my radio broadcast differs from when it's just me versus when Karen participates. And you're laughing. Do you have something you want to say before I say it?
Nope. You go right ahead.
I would say the biggest difference for me is obviously, like when it's just me flying solo, I do tend to rely a lot more on, whatever notes / nuggets that I have written down, for all of my different players. There's a lot more time to drop that in. Whereas that time where I need to use that kind of stuff is typically filled by Karen / the analyst, because, there's something that she sees and she can talk about that, as opposed to me, just like dropping in more. Oh, she's shooting, 36% from, behind the 3-point arc, and, she's got this many doubles and whatever. So it's like, I find myself like needing far less from a note standpoint when Karen is there, because she's obviously filling the gaps with a lot of stuff.
Makes perfect sense, right? I mean, when you have somebody to play off of and have a conversation with and, that kind of stuff, it just makes it that much easier to call a game. It is extremely difficult, and you have done light years more than I ever have solo, but it is extremely difficult to do a radio show solo or to call a game solo. It's really hard. You know what I mean? It's so much easier. Even if you have a bad caller person, it's easier to do it that way than to do the game solo.
Yeah. There's just a lot more prep that you need when you're doing it solo.
Right.
Versus when you've got somebody. Now the challenge is, after doing so many games solo and then you add another person, is you always have to, it takes a little time to kind of find that balance again. And, as far as not talking over each other and all that kind of stuff. It takes
time. I mean, that just takes time to get to know the person. Like, you've done enough games with Karen where that's probably not an issue. But like when you do games with somebody that you haven't done them with before, and you don't know their cadence, and you don't know like when they want to jump in and say something, like you and I got to the point where I knew when you wanted me to jump in. Like, you're the play-by-play guy. You're doing the majority of the talking. I knew when you wanted me to say something, you know what I mean? Without having to look over at you or, whatever the case may be. Right. So it just, but that's just familiarity. You know what I mean? That's just doing it, repetitions, right? Practice, reps, all that kind of stuff.
And and the challenge for her is she's also done some more TV games the last few years. And that's different as well, especially, because like when you're either one, the play-by-play or the analyst, you can go on a little bit of a tangent when you've got a TV game because you've got the video there, so you don't have to worry about viewers missing out on anything because they can at least see it. But when you're on the radio, if you kind of, like go on a little bit longer, it's, like when you and I first started doing football together, it's the analyst talks up to the point, like once the offense gets to the line of scrimmage, the analyst has to figure out, okay, I need to find my out point because then the play-by-play guy has got to set things, so it's like you can't go too far past that point or else it all just ends up being a jumble of words flying around. And you and I have heard other football broadcasts that are definitely a jumble of words flying around out there sometimes.
Yes, sir. I've heard people do things with you that don't stop talking. And it's like, and I'm like yelling at the radio. I'm like, stop talking. This is Sean's turn. He's supposed to talk about the play.
Right. Keith said he was able to sync up the last two games that Notre Dame plays. Thank you very much. He said, loved it. Go Irish.
Makes a difference. I'm telling you. Makes a difference.
I used to do, like, I think I've told you, like, we used to do that all the time in college. And that's been a long time since I did that. But like, it just, to me, it always like brought the broadcast to like a different kind of life when you've got the radio guy.
This does. So. I mean, in gen, and this is a broad, sweeping generalization, right? In general, radio guys are better than TV guys. Sorry, maybe I'm biased. I don't know. I just think they do a better job because they have to do more than on TV. They can't rely on the picture. You know what I mean? I just feel like radio guys are just better at what they do.
It's hard to disagree, Vince. It's hard to disagree. No, I'm kidding. Let me see.
I still say you and I need to do a bowl game. Just like give me like the Little Debbie Bowl or
the Little Debbie Bowl. There should be a Little Debbie Bowl. I'm surprised there's not a Little Debbie Bowl.
There should be a Little Debbie Bowl. Just some bowl like on December, like 20th. Like let me and Stiers do that game and
make it happen.
We'll show you what's up.
We got tape. Film don't lie, baby. Film don't lie. Decaf wants to know if you're running an after-school suspension program today.
Close. It was a day that ran up to the showtime, basically. So there was no time to run home and get in the basement. So luckily, have laptop will travel. So worked out pretty well.
Breakfast Club. I like that. I'm surprised that like you and some students haven't put together, like a little, like a TikTok Breakfast Club video or something like that, where you're like
future,
like you're battling with the door, trying to keep the door open, and Bender comes over and he's being all unruly.
Hey,
jamming the door. Salty's got other recruiting questions. Scrap Richardson is here. He says he seems to be flying under the radar. How good will his season be, and how big will his jump be next season? How do you fly under the radar when, like, he just got here? They haven't even practiced yet.
Who's Scrap Richardson?
Antavius Richardson, the freshman wide receiver.
Oh, okay. You want him to get minutes over your boy? Like, I don't think you do. Over Greathouse?
I know.
Look, I'll let you know about Scrap Richardson when I watch practice. I have no idea because
allegedly
some high school film translates to college and some doesn't. So I like to get my first look at guys when they're in a gold helmet. And so
here's the thing though, and I kind of feel like I was thinking about this, and I don't like to, like nitpick and,
but it's
whatever. But, look, we got 2 partial practices. Those practices are only an hour long. Why don't we just get to stay out there for the whole hour?
Right.
We've got to come back like 20 or 30 minutes after the practice ends anyway to do post-practice. Why don't we just get to watch the whole thing? You know?
That was last 30
It's an hour-long practice.
All right.
Those are the only two partials.
Yeah.
And then we get one full and then the blue gold game. And that's it. That's it for the spring.
Right.
Like, it just feels like we should just be out there, be able to see something. Because all you got to do is say, because like the closed door scrimmage last year, we didn't get to have any cameras on.
Right.
We just had our own eyes and we took our notes and we talked about what we saw afterwards. Why can't it be the same with those two practices? If all we're getting is those handful of availabilities, why not just like give us some tangible something to see?
I know. And you notice,
I said, I don't usually, I'm complaining about the access and all that stuff, but it just feels like if that's all we're getting, might as well just be out there for the full hour and see what we get to see, turn the cameras off, and that's it,
Well, and we don't even get the first 5 periods anymore. It's
stretching in 4 periods.
Yeah. 4. So yeah, you're going to see some special teams. You're going to see a couple of drills, and then it's over. You're going to get nothing else. So yeah, it is what it is. At least we get something, I guess.
I was trying to think of some Breakfast Club reference, but nothing was coming to mind.
I haven't seen that movie in a really, really
demented and sad, but social. But that doesn't really fit what you were saying. So
I need to probably pop that one back in at some point. I haven't seen it in a long, long time.
Classic. That was a hit when I was in high school, Vince. Yeah. That's how old that movie is. Well, how old I am, I guess. Vince, are you ready for rapid fire?
Oh, you got some good ones. I'm ready for rapid fire today.
All right. Yes, all right. I feel like we're kind of coming to the main event here anyway, because Salty did have a question about one Chad Bowden. And with this first one, I'm just going to ask you, fill in the blank.
Yep.
Southern Cal football has released a social media video that's captioned "Wide Receiver U of the Past, Present, and Future." It has former Trojan wide receiver Mike Williams talking about how great Southern Cal is. And while he's talking, they show some of his highlights from his college playing days. And it's blank that all of the highlights in that video are of Williams playing against Notre Dame.
I'm trying to think of a good blank. That's the problem. Like, I've got plenty to say about the whole situation, but like a good blank, like it is dangerous about that. It's dangerous that all the highlights are of him playing against Notre Dame, because all of those highlights, like somebody put on social media, like every one of those highlights is in SD. Like they're not even, that's like before HD even. Like get those, like, could you come up with a highlight from this century? Like that would be great. Like I don't understand. It's like when I'm meeting with a parent and they're like, we're going to take our kid out of your school. And I'm like, that's not the threat you think it is. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, I don't think that was the flex that they think it was. You know what I mean? Like, that's where I'm at. Like, I don't think that's what you think it was. You know what I mean? That's where I'm at.
To be exact, I counted, the video was 48 seconds long. I counted 11 different highlights of Mike Williams at least catching a pass. Some of them slants, some of them otherwise.
Yeah.
Like they were all against Notre Dame.
Comeback. Like it's a hitch. Like,
yeah.
Is that really on your highlight reel? Like,
the whole, living rent free in his head thing is probably, maybe it gets overused, but it's also a thing, and like, it feels like this is a thing because obviously, we were asked about the recruit Mosley committing to USC. This came out a few hours, I think, afterwards. But, this is a little bit, it feels like this is a little bit like Chad Bowden continuing to mark his territory. He's like a dog marking his territory out there at USC. It's like he knows other dogs have been around. So now he's lifting his leg, trying to mark everything, and make sure that, it's like, this is my spot,
right.
Don't come into my territory, but, again, it's like, if I were going to meme this also reminds me of, like the Pete Carroll, Jim Harbaugh, what's your deal? What's your deal? Whole thing, like I'm waiting for that. It's like, it's just very odd. And, like you mentioned how old this stuff is. And we know that USC has been, like they've cranked, just like them and Ohio State have probably cranked out the most NFL receivers over the last couple decades plus. Like we know that you're a good wide receiver school. Maybe you might want to recruit a guy in the secondary every now and then, though, because, like, how's it gone trying to stop, other schools, like Notre Dame, for example, but like I did the math on this because Chad Bowden is 30 years old, and we know that he was a USC fan when he was young. So when Mike Williams, like when all these highlights were being made by Mike Williams, Chad Bowden was probably sitting in his living room wearing a number 1 jersey, because he was like 17, 18 years old in high school, so now he's like, ooh, I can go talk to Mike Williams, and he's fanboying over Mike Williams, and they make a, this whole, what he thinks is a great video and everything. So it's, it's just, I don't know, mark your territory. That's what it seems like. It just seems like very, I just, with everything that he does, it's just like, really, dude, like you're just going to keep going a little bit lower, trying to take your shots down there.
Just not the flex that he thinks it is.
No,
just say that,
Salty says apparently Bowden's recruiting includes a lot of clips of USC beating Notre Dame. Is there some bad Chad blood? I mean, like, do you think that maybe, like the Bowden Freeman relationship was rocky at the end?
If it wasn't at the end, it is now. Like, that's how I feel, like with some of the comments that he's been making. How could it not be? How could it not be? Like, dude, you're going to really, you're going to throw shade like that after you left. And if you didn't work here, there's no way you get a job there. Like,
exactly.
Yeah.
You were enough of a Notre Dame fan when it was giving you the platform,
right?
To build your career.
Well, and like, don't burn bridges, man.
And that's the thing. It's just one cheap shot after another now. I
just feel like in this industry specifically, in college football, in coaching, like it's a small fraternity of people in the grand scheme of things. Stuff gets around. You better hope it works out at USC. I'll just say that because you're burning some pretty serious bridges, in my opinion. And there's going to be a lot more people on Marcus Freeman's side than on yours. So, just be careful what you wish for. I'll just say that. Be careful what you wish for.
Petty. Salty says he thinks Bowden marked his car last season. Sounds like, I don't know what kind of neighborhood you're living in there, but So, speaking of, Stymie says, why put out there at the same time they're threatening to end the series with Notre Dame? And this is something that we talked about yesterday. Jesse and I talked on the show about the comments from the USC athletic director that at least cast some doubt about what's going to happen in the future with Notre Dame and USC. We both decided after seeing her comments, we're like 50-50 on whether, like how far we think that USC will kind of keep it around. But I threw this idea out there, because she was talking about the travel thing, and it's a big issue with the travel. So what if instead of playing USC every year, which obviously has been going on with the exception of the pandemic for a long time, since the 1920s, what if Notre Dame plays home and home with USC for 2 years, then they go 2 years home and home with Michigan, and then they just keep alternating that, revolving that going forward. So you got 2 years USC, 2 years Michigan, 2 USC, like you do that indefinitely. Buy or sell it.
All right. I got 2 answers to this.
Oh, okay.
So if you're telling me that USC wants to cancel the series, okay, and the only way to get them on the schedule is to do the 2-2, I'm in. That's fine.
Because one of the options that we talked about is if you're trying to convince USC, okay, you don't want to do it every year because that's So like maybe you want to do it like 2 years on, 2 years off, something like that.
Yeah.
And then that's when the Michigan idea came into play as well, because obviously you've got to fill those other 2 years with something.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So if that's what you're telling, if it's an all or nothing kind of a scenario, and you're saying, hey, it's either the 2-2 or you get nothing, I'll buy it. I will buy that because I don't want to lose this rivalry. I think this is the best rivalry that Notre Dame has, bar none, and it's not close for me. So if you're telling me it's USC every year or the 2-2,
sure,
I'm sticking with USC every year, right?
This is the alternative. Like if you're trying to save something to keep USC on the schedule, at least intermittently going forward.
It's a concession that I'm not enthusiastic about, but I would take it because it's a compromise, right? Like, I'm willing to compromise as opposed to losing it altogether, right? Or getting it like once every 5 or 6 years, or something like, I don't want to do that either. So if you're telling me it's not going to be every year, then I would be on board with this. Okay. I want it every year. I want it every single year.
Sure. I think we all do. We all want to see it stay around.
Yeah, unlike the other California rivalry that they have. I want this one every year.
I totally agree. Personally, and I know that you want nothing to do with Michigan, but I also personally think it would be a great way, like if Michigan would want to do it, to get Michigan back on the schedule at least more regularly, because those are two great rivalries. And I think, Michigan obviously has Ohio State and Michigan State, but for Notre Dame, like I said, USC is public enemy number one. There's not near the proximity. Michigan is our neighbor, so they're right here. And then the other part of this is I don't consider Stanford a rival as much as Notre Dame keeps trying to tell us it's a rival. It just doesn't feel like anyone really feels that as a rival, even though they're keeping them on the schedule indefinitely, as long as they can anyway, going forward. And Navy is less a rivalry game to me as it is a time-honored tradition. It's more that than it is a rivalry.
On board with that, 100%. Yes. And it's one that I don't want to get rid of.
Right.
I wouldn't call it a rivalry. Because
and it just feels like there needs to be, I would, Notre Dame and Michigan are natural rivals. And it's sometimes nasty rivals that go way back. And, I think a lot of people would like to see that added. And as, Andrew was in here yesterday, I think NBC would eat up that opportunity if you had the chance to have, if you were guaranteed basically every other year, you're going to have Notre Dame USC, Notre Dame Michigan on NBC from Notre Dame Stadium. I think that NBC would eat that up, plus some potential opportunities to even have some of the road games because of the fact that NBC is part of the Big Ten deal now as well. So
I would like to see some more Big Ten games, if I'm being honest. I like Purdue. I like Michigan State. As far as opponents on the schedule, that kind of thing. And I would be okay, I really enjoyed the Wisconsin game when they played, you know what I mean? I would be okay with some additional Big Ten, more regional type games. I'd be okay with that as opposed to joining the Big Ten. I don't want to do that. But yeah, I mean, like I said, I could, if they never played Michigan again, I would be okay with that. That's where I hate them so much, I don't even want to talk to them. You know what I mean? That's where I'm at. So, but that's me, right? As I can also see the bigger picture, right? And I know that Michigan Notre Dame means a lot to a lot of people, and they want to see that game. I'm not blind to that, right? And that if you can get that on a schedule on a regular basis like that, I totally get it. It's gonna, game day would show up, and it would be a big deal. Mm-hmm. I'm cool with that. I just don't like it. You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
I get it. Some people would rather see Ohio State on the schedule than Michigan. I personally would rather see Michigan on the schedule than Ohio State.
I just want to beat the Buckeyes, man. That's all I want. Once Notre Dame beats them, get them off the schedule. That's fine. They need to beat them at some point.
Yeah. Well, maybe they'll have more chances in the playoffs.
I know, right?
I don't know. See, Chad is in there. He is wholehearted. He wants to play Michigan every year. And so, I would rather see, like you said, you'd like to see Purdue and Michigan State back on. I'm not as into them. Like if I had to pick one from this area, I would just assume it be Michigan. So, and again, the thing that I threw out there with the alternating is sort of like your last, I don't want to say last ditch, but it's an alternative to, okay, USC, you need to alleviate at least some travel. So we'll do this every 2 years. And then I think it would, just be awesome to have that other rival on the schedule every couple of years as well. And that way, everybody from each school, like if you're a Notre Dame guy, you're going to play USC twice and Michigan twice in your 4 years at Notre Dame. And ditto, like for USC, you're going to play, you're going to play Notre Dame twice in your 4 years. If you're Michigan, you're going to play Notre Dame twice in your 4 years. So
yeah, I get
think it'd be pretty great.
Like I said, I'm not against it. I just don't like it personally. Like that's all. And I'm an old man.
I know.
Changes.
I know.
Like it is.
Was counting on that being your answer.
Yeah, my man. I'm glad. I'm glad you can count on me.
That's right.
Hey, I got some breaking news for you.
Okay.
The Indianapolis Colts have re-signed free agent Danny Pinner.
Oh, really?
As of half hour ago.
Wow, I didn't realize he was a free agent.
Yeah. So, good job, Danny.
All right, congratulations to him. South Bend guy.
Yep, guy that played with Jesse, and I coached him, and so great family. So we're always rooting for Danny. So I just wanted to throw that in there.
Whew, my sister's Cal Poly team, by the way, held off by 2 points, 56-54.
Man,
they were outscored 24-14 in the fourth quarter, but held on and won by 2. So they survive and advance for another day. So go Mustangs.
There you go.
Let me see. Notre Dame men's basketball. Back to some hoops talk.
Oh, boy.
They saw their season end in the second round of the ACC tournament today against North Carolina, lost by 20. My question to you, Vince, has the needle moved forward in Micah Shrewsberry's first 2 years at Notre Dame?
It's interesting the way you worded that, because like if you start the needle like when he was hired and you go through year one, so I feel like if the needle was like over here when he was hired, so like year one, I feel like it's like, here. Yeah. And then year two, I feel like it kind of, I feel like you backtracked a little bit. Okay. But overall, is it higher than when he took over? Yes. Right. So the needle has moved in a positive direction within the 2 years, but I feel like they kind of went backwards a little bit in year 2. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Like how much of that can be forgiven by the fact that Burton was out for as long as he was? Like, do you think he makes a difference? Like, does he give him 4 more wins if he's in there?
Maybe. And you can't count on injuries, obviously.
Yeah.
But they just didn't do a very good job of like figuring it out when he wasn't in. You know what I mean? And injuries are a part of the game. I just felt like the defensive intensity wasn't as good as it was a year ago. And like we talked about this a little bit earlier, it just felt like they didn't want to be there at times in the middle of the season. And that's the problem that I have. That's like the wins and losses isn't necessarily the issue for me. It's the product that I'm watching on a regular basis. Because I watch most of the games.
Yeah.
This year, like I think I missed a couple, right? I just feel like
God bless you, by the way.
Well, I'm all in now that somebody
you and anyone else. Because I'm not trying to take shots at him, but like I said,
it's hard to watch. It's hard to watch.
Here's the only, I don't want to say like Joseph is saying, terrible season for Notre Dame men's basketball, not good enough. Well, I mean, obviously the 1-loss record is not good enough, but part of that is like because of where the game is, as I said earlier, besides, Marcus Burton at the top of the list and probably Braden Shrewsberry, number 2, there's not a lot on that team. And as you were saying before, like, they were, relying on a Princeton transfer to come in and be this difference maker. There's not a lot of athleticism on that team. There's a lot of missed shots on that team. on the regular. They don't move exceptionally well, like they don't close out well because of the lack of athleticism. Again, with the exception of a couple guys, but a lot of that is because he has basically been cobbling together roster. He definitely had to cobble one together last year, and then you deal with, more transfer portal flux and all that kind of stuff. So, I mean, I think I agree with what you're saying. Like, I think that the needle is pretty much stuck where it was. I really don't think that it has moved, but next year is the year. Like, it's to me, it's all on what we see next year, year 3 with those young guys coming in.
Yeah, no, 100%. And Stymie makes a good point. Some of those younger guys got a lot of time, a lot of minutes here towards the end of the season when Shrewsberry was like, well, it's kind of a lost season. Might as well start playing these young guys. I think that helped. It was a bad season. And I don't even necessarily look at the wins and losses. I look at the product that I'm watching.
Yeah.
And the product that I was watching was hard to watch most of the time. These last few games have been fun to watch. They played hard. You know what I mean? Yes, they won some of those games, but it's because they played hard.
Yeah, exactly.
I can get on board with a team like that. Look, their win-loss record wasn't great last year either, but everybody felt good about that team and the trend that they were on because of the way they played the game. You know what I mean? And I didn't see that the whole season. I saw it at the end, but I didn't see it the whole season. So that's just my only trepidation at this point. There's a lot riding on year 3. No doubt about it. Riding on year 3. I need to see a good jump from year 2 to year 3 at this point. Not saying they got to go to the Sweet 16 or, anything like that.
But again, like what I was saying earlier, like at a very minimum, you need to be on the bubble for the tournament a year from now.
Yeah.
Like that's my minimal expectation is they're on the bubble. If not, so basically you're in the conversation for the NCAA tournament. Honestly, I thought we'd see a little bit more of a bump from year 1 to year 2, and we just didn't see it, unfortunately.
Yep, I wanted them to be on the bubble this year, maybe miss out, maybe make an NIT run. Like that's kind of what I was hoping for this year. They're nowhere near that. Next year, I mean, again, if I expected a bubble team this year, and I'm expecting a jump from year 2 to year 3, do I expect is expecting a bubble team the right thing to expect? Like, is that the step up that we're looking for? Or is, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I don't know what my expectation is yet.
I mean, honestly, I thought that they would at least be in the conversation for the NIT this year, but they're not even there.
Close.
Yeah.
Not even close.
Right. Like that would have at least been a positive step for me. And then we could have said the needle has moved forward. But I agree. It's pretty much neutral. And like Stymie says, Mohammed, Sundra, and Serta show promise as freshmen. And again, not that I was expecting them to all light the world on fire, but I did think that we were going to see more from those guys as freshmen than what we did this year.
Right, when he didn't play them. So I don't know what, I think Sir Muhammad was injured early on in the season and they had, some issues and stuff like that, but didn't see him at all until really the last month of the season.
That's right. Decaf says, big dance or bust. They have a top 5 recruiting class.
Okay. That's fantastic. It's not big dance or bust. I don't subscribe to that yet. Let's see how they play. I want them to play some scrappy defense. I want to move the ball a little bit more, and I want Marcus Burton running the point. I can tell you right now, if Marcus Burton hits the transfer portal in 12 days when it opens up, you might as well go back to the drawing board.
Yeah.
That's
going to be rough. That's going to be rough. And, I saw someone ask Decaf actually when does he hit the portal? I don't think that is a definite by any means, but at the same time, because of the state of college basketball, it's definitely in play.
Oh,
but he's a local guy who always wanted to play at Notre Dame.
Yeah.
He's had that opportunity for 2 years. Is that enough? Like, did he get enough out of this experience to now say, okay, I want to go somewhere where I can, play for a team that's at least going to be in the tournament, maybe have a chance to win a championship?
Look, outside of being a Notre Dame fan, which I am, and watching him in high school and all of those different things, right? He's a great kid. Would you blame him if he wanted to go to a team that was pretty much guaranteed to go to the tournament and make a run? I wouldn't. I would not blame this kid. It would suck as a Notre Dame fan. I would not blame him. This is not the season that he wanted. You know what I mean? And it's not the season anybody at Notre Dame wanted, right? Inside the program and all that. But I wouldn't blame him if he transferred to a better team. I really wouldn't. And, you know, whether that comes with money or otherwise, the goal when you play college basketball is to make the tournament. And Notre Dame has been nowhere near that in his first 2 years.
Yeah. Stymie says he'd be sick if he went to Syracuse and joined J.J. Starling. And I mean, you know, again, like there was coaching turnover and everything else when Starling left, but it does kind of like what kind of difference could that have made if Starling were still here instead of up there in Syracuse?
Well, that absolutely. I don't see Syracuse as a landing spot for Marcus Burton. I'll just say that.
So there's been talk over the last few years about expanding the NCAA tournament, and this is something that continues to swirl. Big 12 Commissioner Brett Yormark said this week he's in favor of expanding the field to 76 teams. The NCAA recently looked at a proposal that would expand the tournament by having play-in games for the 10 through 12 seeds. All the 10 through 12 seeds would be play-in opponents. Do you buy or sell that?
Could not be. This is the biggest sell of the night for me. I do not want more teams in. I didn't like it when it went from 64 to 68. I know that it used to be smaller than 64, but I grew up with 64, so 64 is like my number. I didn't like when they expanded to 68. I absolutely do not want them to expand any further. Huge sell for me.
I am completely at the other end of the spectrum on this. I'm probably in the minority because I keep seeing people complaining, why do you need to expand it? It's fine the way it is. Why not expand it? Like that is that much more product to have on TV. Thursday and Friday are two of the best days of the year, the first 2 days of the NCAA tournament. Why not add to it on Tuesday and Wednesday with play-in games for the 10, 11, and 12 seeds? Why not do it? Why not do it? It's that much more fun.
There's play-in games now. Do you watch them?
I don't watch as much of the 16 seeds. The 16 seeds.
Okay,
If they are, you know, like if you're doing it in the 10 through 12 range, that means that you're going to get
those are the bubble teams. I mean,
they're bubble teams.
Conference,
you're going to get a lot of, maybe a mix. I think it would also help. You know, there's no way to set this in stone every year, but if you had mid-majors playing bigger conference teams, you know, like that would kind of add to some of the excitement of those games as well. And that's my point. I think that they would be, for the most part, good quality games because of the fact that they would be that 10 through 12 range like they're talking about. So this is a buy for me. I like it.
Wow. Okay.
And I wonder, one, it's more TV inventory for CBS and, the TV partners. And two, whether you like it or not, sports wagering is the thing. And that's that much more, for the sports wagering crowd, which also adds to the viewership for games like those. Makes it even greater. So I'm in on it. On it.
Okay. I see where you're coming from. I get it. I'm just, hey man, the game that I'm just too old school. It's Thursday and freaking Friday. Like that's it. Stop messing with the rest of the week. Okay. I have to deal with enough teachers being out on Thursday and Friday. I don't want to have to deal with more being out all week. Okay.
Okay.
It's about me. Damn it.
It's the czar, the pen czar. So, Vince, Aaron Rodgers is apparently choosing between the Steelers and the Giants as his next home. If the Steelers and the Giants are the two options, what is the choice for Aaron Rodgers?
I think the choice is the Steelers, just because it's a more put together program, like franchise, right? I mean, it's a very sturdy, steady franchise. They have better wide receiving core, I believe, than the Giants.
Just added DK Metcalf.
The Giants are a freaking I mean, they're a dumpster fire generally, and more often than not, they're a dumpster fire. I would say as far away from the Giants as humanly possible. And if I were him, I would go to the Steelers. That's what I would do.
I mean, they're both tough divisions. You know,
sure.
You had two playoff teams, you know, from the NFC East. You know, if he went to the Giants, and you had two playoff teams with a chance for, you know, even, you know, like the Bengals were knocking on the door. So it's not like, you know, I guess the Steelers were one of the playoff teams. So I guess, but my point is, the Steelers just seems like if Aaron Rodgers is going to stick around for another year and he's already 41 years old, you know, I realize he was just in New York and he played for the Jets and all that kind of stuff, but it just feels like you go to the Steelers, you've got viable receiving options, you've got DK Metcalf, one of the best, and you've got a great head coach who finds a way to get even the most average teams into the playoffs. Why would you not choose that? It feels like Aaron Rodgers might be playing a little bit of a game right now, just by the fact that he hasn't already made a decision.
As a GM, why?
Irish Eye says he'd retire if those were his options.
Well, that's fair. But as a GM, just looking at the product that Aaron Rodgers has put on the field the last 2 years, now 1 year he was injured or whatever, is that really the direction that you want to go? That's all I'm saying.
Well, but like for the Steelers, you just traded for DK Metcalf, so you've got one of the, you know, top 10 receivers in the game, but you've got no quarterback because you're not going to bring back Russell Wilson. Justin Fields already signed with the Jets, so you've got to have somebody.
Yeah,
you know,
I guess so.
Unless you're going to go back and try to bring Mitch Trubisky back into the fold. They've already, you know, gone down that road once, so it's just, yeah. Like Stymie says, as a GM, he'd take Rodgers over Danger Russ Wilson, and it sounds like Russ Wilson burnt his bridges sufficiently when he was in Pittsburgh for his 1 year. So
I don't know. I feel like
this option.
Plenty of backups out there. Oh God, sure, he'll be available in a year. I feel like there's other backup options that you can go find and sign that would be better. I'll just say that. I'll leave it at that.
I don't know what they are. I don't know what they are.
He's more problem. He's more of a problem than he's worth, in my opinion.
I mean, I agree with that, but the Steelers are desperate, I think, you know, because you don't go trade for DK Metcalf if you're not planning on being a contending playoff team. Yeah. And as much as I don't like Aaron Rodgers either, it seems like there just aren't that many options if you're actually going to go to the playoffs and win playoff games. So new West Virginia head coach Rich Rodriguez has banned his players from TikTok dancing. Good idea or bad idea?
I think it's a freaking great idea. Another huge buy for me. And this has nothing to do with the fact that I hate that app more than any other app on the planet. It's a huge buy. Now, I don't know how well it's going to go over. I feel like TikTok has only been a problem because it's guys in the locker room like dancing after wins or whatever.
Uh-huh.
It never ends well. You know what I mean? So like, I'm really okay with it. Like, ban it. It needs to be banned. It's a problem.
I mean, there's still Instagram. They can still IG dance, right? Like, there's still other platforms they can dance on. But
ban it all. Like, steal their phones.
He's going to let them, you know, like you can still like post your stuff on TikTok apparently, but he just doesn't want TikTok dancing. So I think it's kind of stupid if you ask me. It's like they can,
banning him completely. Okay.
No, they can still be on it. He just doesn't want them doing dancing videos for some reason, which seems like to me, it just seems like an old guy, you know, trying to institute rules, you know, with young guys doing their thing. By the way, like you said that you hate that app more than any other app. I didn't realize you had such deep hatred for TikTok.
It comes from being in this office.
So is that like you guys, like, is that an issue in a school, like the TikTok stuff?
Number one, it's the kids trying to dance in the hallways and like in the stairwells,
shooting their videos, and
then it's also kids posting threats and doing different things like that. It's a social media in general is a problem. That one's a problem.
Yeah. Stimmy's got a good idea. Just block the Wi-Fi in the locker room instead.
Along those lines, I would ban cell phones from the locker room. I wouldn't let them in.
I think that's probably the best idea.
That's what I would do. So
I did see after the whole, like TikTok got banned in the US or whatever.
Like a day and a half. Yeah.
Oh, so that's not a thing? I guess I wasn't even following up on that. Because I had heard that if you already had TikTok on your smartphone, like those phones were going for a lot of money, like on eBay and stuff like that.
No, you can.
I didn't realize. So like, I thought it was like a grandfather situation. Like if you already had TikTok, but you just couldn't download it, but you can, so people can still download TikTok in the US then.
Yeah, it was off there for a little.
I'm showing my old white guy.
Well, it's because I have 4 teenagers in my house. This is why I know this, and I deal with them on a regular basis. But yeah,
I was going to say, if it was banned and your kids had TikTok, you could sell those phones and go out and make some money.
Done yesterday. It's I believe it's back in the App Store. It's available now. Like it was only gone. It was less than a week. And it was brought back.
I feel like we need to start making some TikTok videos then, Vince. I can't remember what game it was, but I was walking. It was after a game. It was after a win, not after a loss, just to get that. But there were a couple of the Notre Dame players, like out by the bus, filming themselves doing the dance.
Yep. We have this one stairwell here at the school where every time I look over at the camera, there's kids like dancing and doing TikToks, and we put a sign up. They're like, "We can see you dancing. It's wonderful, but let's not do TikToks here," or something like that. You know what I mean? It was actually pretty funny, but it is not as big of an issue. Like the dancing in school is not as big of an issue here as it was at my last school.
Okay,
big time problem. My last school. So
I can see that.
Yep.
So a Connecticut lawmaker has introduced a bill that would require movie theaters to disclose what time the trailers start before the movie and what time the movie actually starts. Do you buy or sell it?
So I know I said earlier that was my biggest buy of the night.
You switching? You cashing in?
Wrong.
Rolling your chips here?
It is this. I am all in. I'm pushing them all in on this because, number one, I will not say whose fault it is, but we run late a lot. And to movies specifically. And I would like to know if I'm missing the beginning of the movie.
What am I actually missing?
Right. Yeah. Am I missing the preview?
What's my drop dead time?
Correct.
Yeah. Yes.
Because I want that information, but I am not disclosing that information to my family members. This is the time we need to be here is what I'm saying. But I want to know if I've got a window here. And, some movies have no previews. Some movies have like 20 minutes of previews.
I don't know what movies you've gone to that have no previews because everything I've been to in the last couple of years, it's like they get longer and Brian said 20 minutes you don't get back. I mean, like you sit there and it's like one after the next and it's like, that first one looked kind of good. The rest of them, it's like you saw one good trailer, you just watched 8 trailers and you saw one good one out of the whole 8. And so this is a complete buy for me as well. Like, because here's what's going to happen. Movie theaters, they're all afraid because of the advertising. They put the advertising up front.
Sure.
And then you get into the trailers and then you get a couple more ads before the movie starts. And all these theaters are in such desperate shape that they want, this captive audience to watch all this stuff. I mean, what's going to happen though? Like if you just publish the time, most people are going to disregard it anyway, and they're still going to show up and watch at least half the trailers. But like you said, you want to know what your drop dead time is. You want to know, because this is what gets me is like my wife. It's like, come on, we got to go. We got to go early. We got to get. And it's like, what's going to happen when we get there. We're going to sit there for 25 minutes before anything even starts. Why are we in such a rush to get there?
You're not wrong. You're not, like I said, you guys are a little different in your stage of life. if I'm just taking my wife, we don't really have.
I get it with you. Yeah.
Like when the whole, as my dad used to say, the whole family is coming. Like I need to know that window, man. Like I need to know the gray area because and it's always like, well, we got to the parking lot on time. Yeah, you didn't buy the tickets. You didn't get the popcorn. You didn't get the drinks. You didn't stand in line. That all takes time, folks. Like,
well, see, and that's the thing too, is like we always buy our tickets. Well, not always, but like when we go to the theater that's closer to you guys, because you get the reserve tickets and all that.
And those are smaller theaters.
Yeah, we do that in advance. So like she does that. Gets us in. I go stand in line for the concessions. That kind of thing. But like Brian says, the popcorn's done before the movie, and that is like, because once I start eating that popcorn, man, which happens as soon as we sit down, I cannot stop. And it's like you're 5 minutes into the movie and the popcorn's gone.
That's part of the movie. And the movie theater we go to, you have to prepare your own popcorn, which I prefer, by the way.
Oh, are you at the Dream Theater up there in Niles?
Yeah, man. Because you can layer the butter and do it correctly. And, so I'm all about that. But to get the properly buttered thing of popcorn takes a little bit of time. All right. So you got to get there earlier. So like I said, I need my window. I am writing my congressman. I want this to pass. I want this.
Irish Ice says pick your seat first, then the concession. Well, one, again, like there's one of the theaters here in town where you've got to get reserve seats. So like, where you're going to be sitting regardless. And two, like most theaters these days are like 3/4 empty anyway.
It's true.
So it's like you don't feel like, around here anyway, you don't feel like you've got to be rushed.
Going on like opening weekend or a very, like if I'm going to a kiddie movie and it's like Sunday afternoon, I think it's going to be a little busier. You know what I mean? Or a Saturday afternoon, going to be a little busier. So you got to, Keith, my man right there, he knows where we're going. Yeah. So you got to be strategic about which ones you go to, obviously. So I'm personally a matinee guy. It's cheaper, get it done.
We do too.
Yeah.
We very rarely go to a night movie.
Oof.
Usually it's a weekend, looking to kill some time on a Sunday afternoon or something like that.
Yeah, 100%.
Mess with the bull, you get the horns. Go into a little Mr. Vernon Breakfast Club from DK. Speaking of which, Christopher asking which one of the characters from the breakfast. I mean, that's easy for me. There was a wrestler. There was a high school wrestler in the Breakfast Club. I'm Andrew. Yeah, Emilio Estevez for sure.
You're the jock. I don't know that any of the characters in that movie really, I fit in one of those molds, to be perfectly honest with you, because I had my foot in like the athletic mold because I played a bunch of sports, and then I had my foot in like I did theater and stuff like that. So I was a weird kid. So I don't think I really fit in any of those molds. So,
makes sense.
Yeah.
Irish Eyes misses the trailer. Vince. DK says you're the janitor.
That's messed up.
You're Carl the janitor.
Messed up, DK. But I expect nothing less from you.
Came at him. No one's making fun of janitors, by the way. We had a lot of good ones.
They are the lifeblood of this building. I can promise you that.
Yep, for sure. All right, well, that's going to do it for tonight. Appreciate you being here. Good questions in the mailbag earlier. We will be back tomorrow. It's a we in, we out day tomorrow, so that means I got to make a post on the Champions Lounge. And
you and me tomorrow.
I don't think I've done a we in, we out show since before basketball started.
Because you always had games on Thursdays.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. It's been a long time. So we in, we out coming up tomorrow. Vince and I will be back for that. And we will talk to you then. Hit the like button before you leave. We'll talk to you later on IB Nation Sports Talk.